Thank you so much for joining me. I am on the final day of this When Hearts Heal Summit, and I have loved it all week, watching all of the amazing co-authors present and share all of their wisdom, which I think has just been incredible. And I'm really excited to be able to share some of my story with you. I have suffered with burnout, and that's how I came along this path. I would describe myself, my name is Lucy Lambert, and I would describe myself as a former overfunctioner and burnout survivor. I burned out really slowly, but almost completely over several years, and it absolutely affected me hugely. And I honestly didn't know that it was possible to do this to yourself. I've later found out that I am neurodivergent, something I didn't know about myself for a very long time. I was a high achiever, but I was quietly crumbling, doing it all, but not able to sustain it as life just happened. I found heart healing through this kind of breakdown, and I had sessions with Natasha and some of her team, and it really has made a massive, massive difference to me and helped me to reclaim myself through through boundaries, through putting in boundaries for myself and realizing where I was leaking my energy to other people. I just want to share really today that at the heart of burnout is us abandoning ourselves, but how overfunctioning isn't our fault, and how we can begin to come back to ourselves through loving ourselves again and understanding where the trauma has occurred for us. So my story, I was the high functioner, if you like. I was a primary school teacher for 20 years. I'm a mother of three. Two of my children have additional needs, so that in itself put a lot of pressure on me. For a long time, I felt as though I was always on. I looked like I was coping. I was doing all of the things, looking the parts, I suppose, doing all of the things that I was supposed to be doing. But actually, inside I was crumbling. I went through quite a lot of issues with my son, particularly at school, and my body was completely flooded with cortisol. I was always on. I was on. I couldn't switch off. And I felt as though I was living in survival mode 24/7. I was always bracing for the next demand. And as I think a lot of us know, when we're mums, women working, we carry our own responsibilities, but we also carry a lot of responsibility for other people. And I was carrying the needs, emotions, burdens of everyone around me. And for a while, I managed. For a really long time, I managed until my body simply couldn't anymore. In fact, I used to enjoy being that person. I used to like to be the reliable one. I used to like to be the one that people would come to sort out problems. But eventually, I just couldn't do it anymore. I was absolutely depleted, and chronic fatigue set in. And it got to the point about 4 years ago when some days I could barely get out of bed. I was still doing the things I had to do. I was looking after the children. I was doing the things that were necessary. And obviously my children came first. But I think in that situation, even more, I was chronically fatigued, but still I came even lower on the pile then, because then I just had to fight through. And I kind of thought that fighting through was the way. I thought that doing that was sort of kind of showing how strong I was, until I wasn't strong anymore. So eventually I hit a wall. Even the smallest tasks felt utterly overwhelming. Getting out of bed, cooking, making a meal, sending an email, it all felt impossible. And I would sometimes just look at my laptop and think, I really should open this, but I've got nothing. I can't. The overwhelm was huge. I've always prided myself on being really determined, quite tenacious and resilient. I prided myself on pushing through, thinking that is the way, that's what you do. Come on, dig deep. But this time, no amount of willpower could pull me out. I was exhausted and resentful, really, of the things people were asking of me because I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't their fault. I'd always done it. Of course, they would expect that of me. Of course they would. But I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. And this time the willpower couldn't pull me out. It wasn't happening. It just wasn't going to happen this time. I felt quite detached from myself in a way. I almost felt as though I was watching my own life. I don't know if anyone's ever felt like that, where you're kind of going through the motions, but you're not really there. And actually memories of that time are quite scarce and not detailed because I just was doing things and not really being there. And I'll never really forget thinking that I don't even know what I want anymore. I only know what everyone else needs from me. I think that's what I know. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know. I feel as though there's probably quite a few people who have got to that point in their life where you feel that you've lost touch with yourself. You've been so busy holding everybody else together and all of the things together that actually yourself at the centre was completely lost. And for me, my body finally said, enough, just enough now. I tried everything to recover. I mean, I really tried everything. I'm pretty tenacious at the best of times, but I really tried everything. I got more rest. I tried supplements, different therapies. I previously had a lot of therapy for anxiety, which had really helped at the time, taken the edge off for sure. But none of these things that I did reached the core, touched the root of my issues. Because burnout isn't just about stress. At the heart of burnout is trauma. And that's what I discovered. Sometimes it's the big traumas that we can all name, but often, and definitely for me, it's the repeated little t traumas, being criticised, being rejected, or made to feel invisible. Whether that is by others or just your perception of it, because I've learned quite a lot about myself, about how sometimes it was my perception of that, but it wounds you. It was a trauma. And I had things from when I was younger that definitely stayed with me. Some big things, but more little, small things, little t traumas that were huge to me and had a real impact on my life. But what I'd done was I'd pushed them down. I'd move them out of the way because I didn't want to deal with them and I felt they were in the past. But through heart healing, I have discovered that the heart remembers what the mind forgets. So we think we're preserving ourselves, we think we're protecting ourselves by pushing these feelings down. And actually what we're doing is we are just putting the trauma, keeping the trauma in our body and in our hearts, and we're moving on. And what happened to me is that it became very clear that that wasn't working anymore and that it needed to come out. Heart healing gave me the compassion to meet the wounded parts of myself, to forgive myself for being imperfect, and to begin releasing what I've been carrying for far too long. And that for me is when the true healing began, and why I trained to become a heart healing practitioner once I'd seen the huge benefits that it had had for me. So just to talk a little bit about burnout, I think people talk about things all of the time about being really, really tired, and we're all juggling a lot. We are, absolutely, we are. But this is more than that. Burnout isn't just about stress. It is about chronic self-abandonment, about really forgetting who we are, what we need, and abandoning ourselves again and again. And we silence our own needs in order to meet the demands of others. It's quite clever, really. But what it is a survival strategy, and it's not something we can do long term. So what we can do, especially as mums, we prioritise the needs of our family over ours. Excuse me, I'm just going to have my throat has been bothering me this week. But it's not a flaw putting others ahead of us. It's a survival strategy. And for many of us, especially women, it's what we've been conditioned to do since childhood. You know, to be helpful, don't complain, put others first, smile even when you're crumbling. And if you get rewarded for that, as in people see you as the go-to, the strong one, the capable one, then that kind of makes you feel good about yourself, because, you know, it's nice to be seen as that. But what you are doing is abandoning yourself over and over and over again in order to prioritize other people. And this takes its toll. Over time, it takes its toll. You know, we've masked our own needs, we've performed for others, we've overextended. And yet inside, we're feeling really quite broken and damaged. But the important thing is to know that it isn't your fault. You know, we haven't done this on purpose. One of the hidden but biggest drivers of burnout is the invisible load. It's just about the things that I was talking about. So managing emotions for others, be it family, friends, children, of course, managing how they feel about things, advocating, caregiving, masking, all of those jobs that lots of us, particularly women, I'm talking about, but men as well, of course, but that we are looking after everybody else. And that gives us a nice feeling. You know, it's a nice feeling to feel as though you're looking after everybody. But what you're doing is carrying an unseen weight. And then eventually, well, for me, I collapsed under that weight. It wasn't something I could do anymore. When you're the emotional center for everybody else, you neglect your own needs, because there's just not enough to go around. There's just not enough to go around unless you have put things in place to make sure that that is the case. So we, as women, manage emotions for our partner, our children, our colleagues. We anticipate needs before anyone even asks us. We remember birthdays, forms, appointments, but advocating for loved ones in systems that weren't designed for them. Certainly for me, with my son, he was in a school system that didn't suit him, and the burden of being, burden's not the right word, the passion that I felt for ensuring that my son received the very best of what he deserved drove me. So advocating for him was a lot easier than advocating for myself. And if you're neurodivergent, which I've now found out I am only very recently, I have ADHD, or you're parenting neurodivergent children, the load's doubled, because you mask your own struggles. You handle sensory overload. You're constantly advocating. You're telling them it's okay. It will be okay. And it is okay because you make it okay. The invisible load is crushing, though. And because it's unseen, it's rarely acknowledged, but your nervous system knows. I was the absolute queen of being able to look like I had it all together for a very long time. I was great at PR, I think. I just was good at looking like I was okay, chatty, friendly, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we were laughed at the school gate, but, you know, it was fine. Until I couldn't. And then when that part happened, suddenly, even putting on makeup, getting ready for the day, it felt too much. And it was only then that I was like now I can't. The mask is slipping. The mask is slipping. And I didn't like it because it made me feel as though I wasn't doing a good enough job. But now I recognise that the collapse isn't failure. It's inevitable because the load I've been carrying was just too much for too long. So your body responds when boundaries collapse. So do we. So when we have forgotten what boundaries even are, which I know I did, because for me, burnout looked like exhaustion that no one could help me with. No amount of rest could fix. I went to bed exhausted. I woke up exhausted. I felt exhausted all day. It looked like resentment towards people that I cared about and that I loved. My wider family, I'm talking about more adults that had expected me to do things for a long time. So I had nothing left to give. I felt as though, please stop asking me to do things. I can't do it. It looked like losing my sense of self. Because not only that, I'd always been that person who'd done everything for everybody. So not being able to do it, I felt that I was losing myself somewhere. It looked like brain fog, chronic fatigue, emotional flatness, health flares, just feeling ill and glands up, all of those things, even just full shutdowns where I just couldn't, I just had to go and lie and sleep and like just be left alone. And I would often do that when I'd taken the children to school. I would then just come back, go back to bed, which was just a complete waste of my day, but I just couldn't do it. Because that's what burnout does. It strips away not just your energy, but also your vitality and your identity. Like, who am I anymore? Who even am I? And again, it's not weakness, it's wisdom. You can see that now. It's your body saying, no more. Like, this is it. This is just a quote from me, really. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore, just what everyone else needed from me. And I wonder if there's anyone that feels that they can identify with that they have felt that, because your role becomes being something to other people, but actually to yourself, you're just not, don't even know who you are and what you are anymore. So for me, I've talked about the trauma, the big T and the little t, the small t, that fuels burnout. Big T trauma is often the thing that we would expect would cause something. And I think we can frame a lot of our stuff around that. I have had big T trauma. When my eldest daughter was born, there was really big T trauma and a huge thing that I had to go through as a mum and as parents. It was huge. It was a big T trauma. But actually, I don't think it was that one that kind of broke me. It was the trauma from before, in my life before, and it's small t traumas that have followed ever since. And that's what's fueled my burnout. It's not just obvious big events. And I think that's what we need to be careful of, because we can be a bit unkind to ourselves thinking, yes, but it wasn't that bad. You know, things weren't that bad. It was okay. Everyone has things to deal with. And of course they do. But if you are also coming from a place of being neurodivergent, that adds extra weight because you're masking without even knowing you're masking. Sensory overload becomes too much very, very quickly. And for me, that was definitely the case. I could see it was like I was driven by a motor, trying to do these things, trying to spin all the plates, trying to never let anybody down. And I think women, we can often disguise this trauma as normal stress. And of course, we do all have a load, an invisible load, but actually, if it's tipping over into more than that, and it definitely was for me, I was pretty good at hiding it. And that's the thing. So no one really knew. And then when I was burnt out, people were a bit surprised, like, oh, like, what's the matter? Because I'd always done what people expected of me up until that point, up until I really just couldn't. I just want to pause here to say this part that's really important to me, because I, for quite a long time, felt quite broken. I felt as though, honestly, is this it? Is this my life now? Is this what it is? Have I had my life and this is what I've got to look forward to, having no energy, having to feel exhausted, like I can barely do things. And I have quite a lot of shame with it, I think. Shame that, why can't I cope like everyone else? Why am I failing at things that should be simple? But I have come to realise that burnout is not failure, it is your body's wisdom. And for me, this realisation was a turning point. And as I started on my healing journey and looking really, really, where were the cracks for me? What had come in? What had I allowed into my life that I shouldn't have done? And that's when I realised that I wasn't broken. I was burned out. And not just the kind of burnout when you need to have some extra vitamin C for a couple of weeks or get some extra rest, but truly, truly burned out to my core, to my bones. And once I understood that, I could release the shame and I could finally meet myself with compassion. And that's when I realised that healing the heart is the key to recovery. So, boundaries to bliss. This is kind of what I've come up with as my kind of mantra to how we can help ourselves to recover. Because how do we come out from and come back from burnout? And for me, the bridge was boundaries. Not rigid, punishing boundaries, but boundaries here, as I said, as welcome mats. Like, this is, do this for yourself, Lucy. This is what you need to do. Welcome back to yourself. And I think we often see boundaries as a wall, like this, we can't get past this, but actually they're not. This is, we need to be able to not be rigid, be softer with ourselves. And I used to think that boundaries were selfish. But what I discovered was the opposite. When I forgave myself for being imperfect, when I showed compassion for my needs, I had more energy to give. My yes, when I said yes to something, it became true and not resentful. And this is what I call moving from boundaries, from burnout into boundaries and to bliss. And here's where heart healing supports so much. Because often what blocks us from setting boundaries are old wounds, the times we learned when it wasn't safe to say no, when those parts of us are met with compassion and healed, if we do that for ourselves, then boundaries stop feeling selfish and they start feeling natural and freeing. And of course, I must do this for myself. Of course I must. I deserve it. So I've identified a few energy leaks, 3 energy leaks that I consider can be the root of burnout for a lot of people. The first one being over-functioning. Absolutely, I was guilty of that. I wonder if anyone else, if you have or would consider yourself to be an over-functioner, or certainly at times. I'd be really interested to hear that in the chat. So if you're over-functioning, you're somebody who's always fixing and holding everything for others. But we're often doing it for things that aren't ours. They aren't ours to fix or to hold. So it drains us dry and it creates resentment eventually. It drains our energy, creates resentment, which isn't a nice feeling either. So the gentle step here is to pause and to ask, is this really mine to carry? Is this thing that I'm worried about mine to carry? And here's where heart healing helps. Because often our urge to overfunction comes from old wounds. Maybe we learned as a children it was the only way to feel safe or loved, to do the things and say, oh, well done. I know I was that. I was the oldest daughter and the oldest granddaughter on one side, and I was the one. I kind of led the way, and it was like, well done, Lucy, you've done well. Great, you're such a good girl. You do well at school. You do the things. You never let us down. You're well behaved. And actually, that made me feel valued. So I never ever, like, I had a wound that I hadn't realized, but that made me worthy being that person. But heart healing has made me realize that actually I can reassure that younger me that I don't have to do that all the time, that I don't have to do that in order to be worthy. Second energy leak, saying yes from guilt. Oh my goodness. Has anybody ever said yes to a task, to a job, to doing something for somebody when your body is screaming no? I mean, I have done it so many times, and I'd hate to let anyone down. I hate to. And I don't want to disappoint anyone. I don't want to feel guilty. I do feel guilty if I don't do it, or I certainly have done. And that is painful. I've actually found it quite painful thinking, oh my gosh, every guilt creates, every guilt, yes. Every time you say yes from guilt, it does create resentment in your body as well. Because you're like, I am doing this, but I don't want to. And that built up more and more in me. So my practice for that is to say, let me check and get back to you. So stop doing those gut, yes, of course, no problem, no problem. Because this guilt is rooted in old conditioning. Many of us learned early that love was conditional, or that saying no meant rejection. Even if it wasn't explicitly said, that's what we felt, that's what we believed. That healing our heart can help us to meet those wounds. It softens our guilt so that our no can be clear and our yes can be wholehearted. And I'll be honest, I still have to work on that one, because I've been a yes person for so long, and a people pleaser, absolutely recovering people pleaser for sure. The third one that I would identify as a big energy leak is over-explaining. Over-justifying your needs or your no, having to explain to other people why you feel a certain way, why you need this space, why you've got to say no to this. And justifying our needs is exhausting. People need to understand that your no means no. And actually, we don't have to give a reason. Because if we're constantly over-explaining ourselves and justifying what we're doing for ourselves, and we're not holding ourselves at the heart of it, then it erodes trust. And it erodes our trust in ourselves if we don't allow ourselves to get the space that we need. So if you're saying no, you don't need to justify yourself. It's not about being rude, but it's just about saying, that doesn't work for me right now. That's not something I can do at the moment. So this is something that I call the boundary spiral, because healing boundaries isn't linear. It is a spiral. And it's hard. It is hard to do. Some days you will have these boundaries, be like, I'm absolutely doing this for myself. And you will mean it. You will mean it. But whether you'll do it or not will depend. Some days you'll hold them strongly. So other days they'll collapse. But that doesn't mean you failed. It means that you're practicing. And that's really important. And I think we'll always still be practicing. I know I am. Every attempt at a boundary strengthens that self-trust. Tells yourself, tells your body, I've got you. I can hear you. I know what you need. And I'm not just going to let this happen to you. But there will be stumbles, and that's okay too, as long as we keep going back to knowing that we deserve it. Because each attempt strengthens our trust. It's not failure, it's practice. So what shifts when we have boundaries? Well, the first thing is that our energy returns. I mean, not immediately, but it starts to. And I noticed that with me. I started to explain to my family, I can't do this all the time. I need some time. And to my children, Mummy needs some time. I've got to do this for myself. So my energy slowly started to return. And my resentment suffered as well. Once I'd put those boundaries in, That's my Once I put those boundaries in with my wider family, I suddenly felt as though things were a lot easier because gently I was telling them I couldn't do it anymore. And then eventually they stopped expecting me to in quite the same way. So that made me feel less resentful towards them because then when I did do things, I felt that it was something I wanted to do rather than something that I should be doing, which makes a huge difference to how we feel. So where we have been younger and not been able to set those boundaries, now that we're doing it and that we're valuing ourselves, then our self-worth starts to rebuild because we notice that actually, oh, it is okay. The world doesn't fall apart when I put boundaries in place and that I look after myself. And relationships shift. Some do change. Some may go by the wayside if that person was somebody who only wanted you for what you could give them. And you can begin to heal other relationships and actually not feel that resentment towards them. Because in some ways, we're not being very fair or kind to people when we're not telling them that what they're doing to them, how it's making us feel. So it comes as a big shock to them that suddenly we're absolutely exhausted and cross that they keep asking us to do these things for us. But once those wounds that you deal with, those heart wounds, once they're softened, boundaries stop feeling so scary. They become more natural, loving, and life-giving. I'm wondering if you could think of anything where you feel that you could set a boundary that you know really you should be setting, but you've been resisting, perhaps because of the reaction of others. Because the important thing to remember is that we need to rebuild our identity, and then we remember who we are outside of our roles. Like, we're not just mum, daughter, wife, colleague. We're not just those things. We are ourselves. And it's coming back to that that makes all the difference. So the things we need to think about when it comes to this, burnout and the boundaries, is what am I carrying that's not mine? What do I need right now? And where would a boundary bring me relief? I wonder if I just going to pause for just a few seconds just to give you some time to think about that. What are you carrying that's not yours? What are you aware of? What do I need right now? And where would a boundary bring me relief? Sometimes we just need that pause to think about it. You don't need to fix anything just at the moment. Awareness is powerful. I know if people like to journal these things, I'm not a big journaler myself, but I definitely like to think about these. And I try to think about this if I go on a walk or do those kind of things, just to be with myself. So I just want us to just pause for a moment, and I'd just love to guide you through a really simple reset that you can use anytime. If it feels comfortable, close your eyes and soften your gaze and place a hand over your heart. Take a slow breath in and out, and another. And now ask yourself, what am I carrying that isn't mine? And then imagine setting it down beside you, just for now. And take a sigh of relief. Now ask yourself, what boundary wants to be honoured today? It might be small, it might be big. Whatever arises is enough. And then take one more gentle breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you for doing that with me. This is how reclamation begins. Softly, one boundary at a time. I want you to imagine something with me. I want you to imagine what it would be like if your energy was truly yours again. What if your yes always meant yes? And what if rest didn't come with guilt, but with ease? Picture it. Maybe it looks like laughing with your children again, or finally having the energy for creativity, or simply feeling at peace with your own body. This is reclamation. For me, it wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who I always was underneath the exhaustion. And that is absolutely huge for me. Like, who am I? And I lost myself there. I lost myself for a while, and it was really sad and upsetting. But actually, through working, healing myself, I've been able to start to come back to who I really am and to do the work that I really want to do and to have energy for the things and the people that I love. It's not about being someone new, it's about being really you. And burnout doesn't have the final say, reclamation does. And that for me is huge. And I know it's something I want to share with people because I've gone through something, and when I see people struggling with that load, it's something I want to do so much, is to make it better, because we don't even know what we're doing to ourselves. And yes, it can be other people and things they're doing, but the boundaries are ours. And that's what we need to stay set with. Oh, so I thought there was more on this slide, but it's not here. But I wanted to leave you today with something practical. I have created a free gift for you, which is Boundaries to Bliss starter kit. So it looks, just going to hold it up like this. It is like this. And if you scan the QR code, then you will be able to go onto my website and download this. So it's Boundaries to Bliss, your first gentle steps to reclaiming energy, self, and peace. And within it, there are some tips talking about the energy leaks that we touched upon here, a little bit more about what I have done to recover from burnout, and different ways that you can start to do exactly the same thing for yourself. Plus, there are some gentle practices that you can use. It's light and compassionate, and it meets you where you're at. It's not tricky, and it can be something you can come back to whenever you need it. And it's my way of saying thank you and giving you a first step into Boundaries to Bliss. Oh, here it is. There it is. Put it in twice. There you go. That's the invitation. I'll give it to Natasha and the team as well, so that they can share it with you if you'd like to have that. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful. I just want you to know that you don't have to earn rest. You are allowed to begin again softly. And this is so important, and something that we all need to do for each other and support each other in. There's some contact details below if you wanted to get in touch with me, my website, The Abundance Evolution, and email grow@theabundanceevolution.com if you'd like to contact me. I'd love to hear from you if I can support anybody. The main thing I want you to take away, though, is that if you are feeling exhausted, if you're feeling not always burned out, but on the pathway to it, you need to know you're not broken, you're burned out. And burnout is your body trying to bring you home. Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful to Natasha, Bray, and her team, and all of my amazing co-authors. This has been such a really, really lovely experience. But I've absolutely loved this, and so grateful to have been able to spend this time with you. And thank you very much.